Welcome to Deep Dives with Dr. Dan, where the future of dentistry is built one conversation at a time. Powered by OrthoBrain, we bring you the leaders and innovators shaping the modern practice. I am your host, Dr. Dan. Let's dive in. Welcome to Deep Dives with Dr. Dan, where the future of dentistry is built one conversation at a time. Powered by OrthoBrain, we bring you the leaders and innovators shaping the modern practice. On today's episode, let's dive deeper with our guest, Dr. Chris Salierno. He's a superstar dentist who's worn many hats during his career, and each one of them with extraordinary success. Dr. Chris, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dan. It is a pleasure.
Well, I want to confess, I have the exact same emotion right now that I had yesterday morning. At about the same time, I loaded up all my kids into our SUV. We drove 90 minutes to Cedar Point, which is an amusement park. It's so much more than amusing to me. It is absolutely a delight. What we do is we scan the tickets and then I run to the roller coaster, my favorite roller coaster, because I can't wait to get to the dessert of the day. It's dessert first. And don't build up to it. I'm going to do the same with you, Dr. Chris. I want to ask you a question that has really been nibbling at me. And that is, at some point in your life, you decided you were going to be some sort of doctor. Did you plan on wearing multiple hats, rebranding yourself, changing your career path multiple times once you became a doctor?
No, never. It's always been just the next step. So, you spend your high school, and for me, it was college. I realized I settled on dentistry. My dad is a happily retired orthodontist, so it was always there in the background. And I think the bug bit me in dental school when I got involved with ASDA. It's American Student Dental Association. You're so focused in dental school on just learning the carpentry of dentistry, learning, how to mechanically do those things, but also learning the human body, how to not harm people and how to do great work. You're so focused on that to simultaneously be exposed to, legislation and governance and regulating and supporting dentists in doing all of those great things. That just became a fascinating world with skills, a whole other skill set to develop: public speaking and writing, communicating in various ways. And the bug bit me, and that was it. And so ever since then, I while I was still pursuing higher levels of excellence in clinical dentistry, however excellent I may have gotten, is to be determined. I think I did okay, but I was simultaneously starting to pursue these like extracurricular activities. And I never knew I was going to be wearing multiple hats, but it just became a thing where maybe it was a shorter attention span than most. I started to get addicted to wearing multiple hats, and any one of those pursuits just couldn't hold my attention for too long. I like juggling. But it definitely hit me in dental school is when I learned I'm probably going to do more than one thing throughout my career.
Chris, that absolutely fascinates me. I'm going to take a little liberty and say that maybe you're a little more curious than the average person. You think it was curiosity?
I am. So it's funny is I started a blog in 2009, 2010, and it was called The Curious Dentist. So funny that you use that word. And I am endlessly curious. I've got a whole, stack of books back here. I'm hopefully getting to originally. I enjoy the pursuit of knowledge. I have so many questions, but why is this way? And I really enjoyed learning the answers in residency. I remember when usually, they're still learning. We're still getting better at what we're doing. But the academic portion of our our training is really over when you're in a general practice residency. But for me, it was just beginning. For holidays, I was asking for textbooks as gifts. The nerdy confession I must share here. But gosh, because I was like, oh, there's just so much more to learn, and I enjoyed the learning process. So yeah, I think I'm pretty curious.
Well, I hope you're willing to take the time and walk us through some of the hats that you wore. Here's the caveat, and that is I'd like for you to be able to give us at least one take-home point from each step of that journey. In other words, I heard one. You said you learned about public speaking. Anything that you can share with us that you brought home as you've gone through this amazing journey?
So few of the hats I wore, trying to become a public speaker. I realized after the American Student Dental Association, of course, got involved in the American Dental Association, but I really had this growing addiction to getting in front of a group of people and teaching them a thing. And you get to do that in the dental, in our professional associations, but I really like teaching. I got that from my mother. My mother was a teacher. And so, I'm a nobody. I just graduated. Who wants to get me to go talk in front of a group of people? And so I started pursuing, as you get curious, you find out every now and then there isn't an answer yet to a thing. The answer is we don't know yet. And that can become a really interesting place to start your lecturing career. So, for anyone who's interested in lecturing and in public speaking and teaching, I think if you're the 1 millionth person to lecture on just cosmetic dentistry principles, then that's a red ocean, as we say in the business world, right? Like there's a lot of people doing that. If, however, you want to lecture on a unique sub niche of cosmetic dentistry, you're going to find that you can really accelerate the opportunities you have, and you can contribute to the profession in some really interesting ways. For me, that clinical niche was on implant complications. In the late aughts, so I graduated in 2005, did residency in 2006. So in 2006, 7, 8, there were still a lot of implant lectures just on why you should do an implant versus a 3-unit bridge. That's where we were as a profession, right? Still training that. There were a lot of people talking about that. And there were some gorgeous lectures on, implant aesthetics. Not just can we get this thing to integrate, but how do we get it to look as much as like a tooth as possible? That was a really interesting place to be in. But for me, the sub niche that I developed with my friend, Dr. Scott Fromm, who's a periodontist, we got into the sub niche of implant complications. From a restorative dentist standpoint, what are all the things I can do to screw this up, right? And that vulnerability also became, I think, a powerful thing as a lecturer. Hey, this guy's willing to show his C+ cases and share what he learned from them. That is interesting. That's compelling. Not just that there's also not a lot of other people talking about this. So that would be one lesson from that phase of my career. The next bit, I wanted to lecture more, so I started a blog. I started getting into, self-publishing just to get my name out there and build I became addicted to writing, but I also just wanted to get my information out there, and no one else was publishing me. Again, I'm kind of a nobody, but really strong networking would be the next big lesson here. There's lots of books on this, but for me, powerful networking is going to as many meetings as you can, talking to as many people as you can, spending as much time on the exhibit floor as you are in the lectures, just building your network of folks, but then also not just asking them for favors, but making emotional deposits before you make emotional withdrawals, as they say. And so getting my name out there, starting to get some lectures together, publishing my own blog. One of the next big moments of my career came about when I was asked to be chief editor for Dental Economics. So that was a really fun ride. Did that for 7 years. That would be the next big one. And that just accelerated my education on business. And that for me really replaced my clinical passion. I enjoy clinical dentistry very much, but I started to lecture less on clinical dentistry and more on business. As that really opened my world. I didn't open my own practice from scratch at that point. But now when you've got Roger Levin on speed dial, like that's an incredible opportunity, right? In that role to accelerate my knowledge on business. And I started to lecture more and more on that. And I felt like I had some authority to lecture on that in the position I was in.
Wow. Amazing how you've been able to do so much really so quickly. I imagine that the position you have now as CDO, Chief Dental Officer, is really quite different than the role you had as leader of your private practice when you got things started. Tell me, as a leader of a private practice, being the top producer, the number one producer in your business, versus being the leader in I'll call it an enterprise entity where you really don't pick up a high speed. Tell me about that mind shift.
Yeah, so that's the next great chapter of my career for sure. Is about 5 years ago now, left my private practice, left being editor for dental economics and a few of the other pursuits I was doing, and joined Tend as a chief dental officer. That, I thought I knew a lot about business. I did. I thought I knew what it took to run a successful practice. I had some decent ideas doing it myself. The word you used, enterprise, is really good. However good you may be at running a single business, that you are there reaching out and touching every single day, to bring that to enterprise level, multi-site leadership is an entirely different skill set. I had some training on this. That was when I was with the American Dental Association. I was chair of the New Dentist Committee, and I've been on that committee for 4 years. And you're learning how to affect change, drive membership, and all of these things through a whole network of the tripartite, right? From the national to the state level to the local level. That's a taste of multi-site leadership in a way. It's not a business, it's a professional association, volunteer. But it gave me a taste of realizing, just because I write an email that says I want something done a certain way, or we should do this, doesn't mean magically everyone just starts doing that thing, right? And just because I was able to, drive case conversion, communicate with patients a certain way, doesn't mean I can just magically transfer those lessons to a fleet of folks, right? And even if you did have the perfect slide deck or the perfect email to just encapsulate how to do that thing, that doesn't mean folks are willing or interested in listening. And this is not, I'm not talking about Tend. This is a lesson in general on multi-site leadership. I learned, quickly how to get engagement, get buy-in from teams, develop things together. So it's not just top-down leadership. That you can have bottom-up leadership where the whole team together is developing through a feedback loop. Right. That was the next great challenge, and I think after 5 years, I'm getting okay at it. I like to hope I'm getting pretty good at it, but that is, you're absolutely right. Just being a successful leader of one practice where your performance is entirely under your control. Anyone that you're leading on that team, you're seeing them on a daily basis. You can maintain momentum, a little more easily. Translating that to multi-site leadership, enterprise level leadership is a whole other bag of tricks to learn.
Yeah, well, a couple things that I learned along the way, and I'm sure you feel the same way, is whatever title you have really makes very little difference. You're only a leader when people follow. And if they don't follow you, you're just a person taking a walk. You're not leading anybody. Here's the question. You mentioned earlier that when you became a speaker of notability, people became very interested in hearing you speak. One of the secrets to your success was being vulnerable, and you described it as showing your C+ cases where things didn't go as well. Do you leverage that same concept as a leader is there a place for vulnerability for a leader, or are you just rock solid? I'm in charge. I got this. I'm perfect.
No, I think you have to be vulnerable as a leader. In my business lectures, I was bringing that same vulnerability. So I wasn't just showing my C plus clinical cases. I was also saying, well, I ran a business and here's how I messed this up as well. That vulnerability I found endears you to an audience. People think, you know what, this person isn't just lecturing at me. We're having a conversation. And I think that just makes for more interesting material when you break the ice that way. That has certainly been how I approach leadership in my role now. And honestly, when I was leading a single practice as well, you have to be able to admit when you've goofed, when you could have rolled something out better. If you want your team to be able to accept feedback, which is how they're going to learn and grow, you have to show that you are capable of receiving feedback as well. You can't dismiss that feedback. You have to actually do something with it and be transparent. Hey, that's great feedback. We're going to be able to adopt some of this and help make this move forward and be smarter together. And these notes you've given me here, that's a good idea, but I don't think we're going to be able to implement that. And here's why. So that transparency and that vulnerability is a critical part. But I think you can be confident and still be vulnerable. I don't think that's an either or proposition. And you know, the leaders I've worked with at Tend and other organizations, you know, they're really good at being vulnerable, listening, admitting when they goof, but then still being like, all right, but here's what we're going to do about it. And there's still this trust and this confidence in how we're moving forward together.
It's a beautiful line. And the fact that you just said that today, as I was getting ready to go to Cedar Point yesterday, I'm partway through a Simon Sinek course, and he used that exact language. He's interviewing a Navy SEAL commander from Team 6. And it's in leadership, he said, you can be vulnerable, but you can be confident with your vulnerability. And it's exactly out of your playbook, really. I don't know who came up with it first, but it's beautiful.
I haven't read Simon, and he's obviously one of the great leaders in business. I find a lot of good business advice is when you hear it, you go like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. It's something that you feel like you've either thought before or said before, or you might have heard from somewhere else, because it's really good business advice generally falls under kind of common sense that's just being applied to a certain framework that helps you organize the thoughts. But I'll definitely give Simon Sinek credit for coming up with that properly. That's for sure.
Well, how about if we make an agreement right now? We are so like-minded in the way that we learn. You can see these books. This is not a virtual screen. My shelves are filled and other rooms are filled with books. How about if you and I make an agreement right now that we will do we'll do an exchange. We'll share each other and kind of take it another step, because all this is really quite fantastic. Now, Chris, I want you to look at me, and instead of seeing what you see on the screen now, I want you to see a young dentist. Imagine that I'm a young dentist and I'm getting started, and I want to be a little bit more like you, Chris. I'm not going to wear all those different hats, but I would like to grow my practice and make it better. And I want to be a better leader. Do you have personal habits or suggestions on where to get the knowledge, maybe even training in order to become a successful leader that's growing their practice, whether it's independent or otherwise?
Sure. You certainly don't need an MBA to run a small business. There are plenty of successful small businesses that are run by just folks who I think embody certain principles. So the resources that I've gone to learn these principles, yes, there's great business books. One of my favorites is behind me here, Business Model Generation, which is a book by Osterwalder, written in 2010, about building a business model. And that's one of the most fundamental things before you start a business, is to have a business model. And that can be very, it sounds like a boring exercise to sit down with a blank, Word document and just start typing out your, mission, vision, values, or anything like that. But I think that having clear focus on your target demographic, your unique value proposition, and Osterwalder goes through a whole framework where you take the elements, the building blocks of a proper business model, and one follows from the next. I've seen too many businesses, including dental practices, that just try to be everything to everybody. And it becomes so cluttered. And I say this in my lectures routinely after we go through an exercise, stop trying to be everything to everyone and be something really special to a target few. And it's liberating when you do that. Maybe I've been to, you go to a restaurant or a hotel. Restaurants, I think, commit this sin the most. Is like, who is this for? This feels like there's like guitars on the wall, but then there's also like an elevated bar, but then there's like a section for kids. Like who's the clientele here that this is for? It's trying to be everything to everyone, and it just ends up feeling super cluttered and just weird. Or there's, I think a worse sin, at least those folks are trying boldly to do a thing. They're just doing too many things. The worst sin, I think, is just being incredibly generic. What separates your business from others? So I think having real focus, real clarity on what your business model is, as I'm sharing it, as Osterwalder would. Those are free resources. You can Google Osterwalder Business Model Canvas or his book Business Model Generation. Go down the YouTube rabbit hole and get a ton of information on that. And I recommend people do so, whether you're just getting into practice or whether you've been doing it for a long time, because it's never too late to reinvent yourself. That's one category. The other big category I would say would be culture. And I think some really successful business owners just do this naturally, but you can learn how to do it, how to inspire your team. Again, I used the phrase before, bottom up management rather than just top down management. So creating a culture that is just as unique as your business model, that defines how you are going to do the work that you've set out to do, that makes, in general, folks want to try to make it be fun. So we spend a lot of time in our workplace, and we might as well have it be a fun, positive, diverse, inclusive environment. I think those are principles most of us would follow, but how exactly you do that is going to be special to your business. So lots of good business books on that. I do also recommend Harvard Business Review. So it's, what is it, $20 an issue or something like that, but money well spent, and you get access to their massive catalog online. I think hbr.org is a great resource to just go down rabbit holes and just learn from some really smart folks, especially if you want to have a more academic approach to the leadership and business acumen that you're trying to build. You can't do much better than HBR. They're mostly case studies. It's not scientific business analysis, but there's some really good data and really thoughtful cutting edge presentations that are on a whole host of topics. But in particular, they can take something that feels squishy like culture, and they can make it very orderly for us.
This is pure gold. Thank you for sharing all this. I want to go back to the Walder text. Would you describe that as creating an operating system within the business? Where
he does get into that. Yes, he does get into that. And I'm gonna reference this material at your summit later this year. Osterwalder will have it's the 9 building blocks of the business. So you start with your target demographic. The second part is your unique value proposition. As you work through, he gets into, key systems and the different elements that touch upon how you take the team that you've assembled and then on a consistent basis execute delivering the value proposition to that target demographic. So he touches on it. It's not a book on operations, I would say. It's more a book on how to organize all the disparate elements of a business model and make sure that one flows to the other. So that it all is part of a cohesive idea. There are some really good books though on operations management that I could recommend. But I think honestly, in the end, it's just and it's going to be different. Multi-site operations is totally different from single site operations. But I think if you're a single site operator, It's setting clear expectations, knowing your KPIs, knowing when a system is working or not working, because you're running little experiments, and then are we hitting the KPI? And then being curious, if it didn't work, why? Do we need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what to do next?
Well, this is going to be a great topic at the Orthodentistry Growth Summit this October. Chris, thank you for agreeing to be there and for bringing such a valuable, such an understatement, a topic to our group. What I see working with thousands of dentists is that it's easy to lack clarity inside the practice. And as you know, the great line is, when you confuse, you lose. And having those fundamental elements that are real, they're what you are, and where you intend to go, just makes a world of difference. I want, if you're all right, spending just a little bit of time on culture, because I believe that culture is like that perfect marriage. When you have clarity as to what you're all about, what the purpose of the practice is, the mission, the vision, all those words that we're familiar with, but not really expert at designing and sharing. Tell me about culture, because what I see is that culture is often some real cute lines that are on everybody's wall, right? But they don't seem connected. My line is, your culture isn't what you put on paper. Your culture is what people say about you and company. So can you speak a little bit about culture and how you work with people who don't seem to embrace the culture you're looking for?
Yeah, so I like to start with a sound mission, vision, and values, and there's tons of topics on this, but you're correct that those can just be words that hang on a wall somewhere, and they're never referenced. There's a famous Netflix slide deck that came out many years ago that were defining the culture at Netflix. What does it mean to be here? And this is at least 15 years old. And in a slide deck, and you can only imagine what the presentation was or surrounding that. But in that slide deck, they're very clear on what it means, what excellent work looks like there, and it was so different from many other places. So it's available online. You can find it. But one of the callouts they have is they share how a mission, vision, and values can just go awry, and they share this lovely statement. It's something like, and I'm paraphrasing, ethics is important in business, and unethical work has no place here. This is from this other company. He's like, oh, that sounds nice. Really bold, statement. And at the bottom, then it says, this was the value statement for Enron. You say, okay, so yeah, just because you put it in your value statement doesn't make it so, right? But that being said, I think a mission, vision, and value statement can help again, focus how you do work at your organization. It's then up to you to drive adoption of it. So at Tend, we're really proud of our mission, vision, values. We're really proud of our culture. I think we've got a very successful culture at all of our different locations. There's uniqueness to each location. We call them studios. Each studio has its own personalities and its own vibe and its own leaders, but there is a commonality between them that is very much Tend. That's because we unite them with a strong mission, vision, values that we refer to frequently. Like one of our values is savor the ride. And, being in healthcare, it's exciting. You have a plan, and then it goes sideways when you have, emergencies and whatnot. And so for us, that becomes, we've got these expressions that we apply to that. It means we're going to celebrate success. It's fun doing hard things. All of those kind of little mantras that we use, like, codify them in your mission, vision, values, and it becomes a shorthand for how we do work. So at the end of a really tough day, when sometimes it's a smooth day, but sometimes it's a tough day, we want a team to look together and be like, all right, savor the ride. You guys did it. Awesome. Fist bump. That's a powerful culture moment. What I'll say too, to help make it not just words on a screen, and this is my own personal lecture. This is not a Tend a framework that I'm sharing here. When I lectured to dentists on how to build culture, I call it the 3 Ps. I think I've come up with this. I don't know if Simon or anyone else has beaten me to this, but I call it the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps are how you truly, as a leader, affect the culture that you have as pretty words sitting somewhere on a slide deck or on a piece of paper. It's pay, praise, and promote. How you compensate folks, how you incentivize them to do work will absolutely have an effect on the culture. And you can go too far with it, where you are creating folks who are very competitive, or you're incentivizing the wrong behavior. And it could, in the dark version of it, leads to unethical things. But there's also super positive ways where you're just rewarding hard work, right? Lots more I can say about that. That's pay. Praise. And the opposite of that is how you critique, right? So how do you give feedback? It is essential, I think, for any culture, or you will certainly define your culture a certain way by the presence or absence of feedback. And if you do have feedback, is it being done in a way that's toxic and weird and awkward, or is it being done in a way that builds people up? So praise, that's the next one. That absolutely has an effect on culture, no question. And the last one is promote, or the opposite of that is terminate. I practiced for years, and maybe you did too back in the day. I was, as an associate, I just watched owner doctors that I was working for hold on to people for longer than they needed to. And that person could be a culture cancer and really bring everyone down. The person that always shows up late, the person that just clearly isn't doing their job and is creating drama. To hold on, to not terminate and separate from that person has an impact on your culture. Of course it does, right? But the opposite of that, the positive side of that, is when you have someone that does work really hard, not just praising them, but even elevating them and bringing them to higher levels, putting them in leadership levels. So they're not just a dental assistant, they're the lead dental assistant. That says something very clearly to your team, that they're embodying your values. So those are my personal 3 Ps. I found that works well to help turn the pretty words into actual culture building.
Love it. I actually had to stop myself because I wrote the 3 Ps down. I'm taking notes on my own podcast. Brilliant. You're not going to believe this. We must be brothers that were separated at birth. The very first big stage course I gave was a long time ago. There was a young guy named John McGill who started a company. The two of us were hired by 3M to give a course, and I wanted to teach all about impacted canines and crazy clinical stuff. And they said, no, we want you to teach people how to build a business. Look at this orthodontic practice, teach them how to do that. And I had no content. So I wrote a course, and it's called Prioritize Your Ps for Practice Prosperity. I gave that course and it became a hit. I gave it for so many years. We have somebody that works in OrthoBrain. Her name is Barb Herzog Blaine. And so Barb, I looked at the annual orthodontic conference, the AAO meeting, about a year ago, and I looked, and she's still a speaker there, and she's giving a course called Prioritize Your Ps for Practice Prosperity. That thing is still alive. When you come to, got to show you, I have the slide deck printed out, but I didn't have those. You looked at it. You've got a brilliant mind. You brought in the cultural aspect, and mine was I wouldn't say transactional, but it was a different lens that you look through. But I was in my 20s, so I didn't have all the experience that you have. I love it. This is great.
There's different. I like to use the word lens. There's different lenses. There's frameworks, and different business minds will present their version of it, their spin of it, or something new. As long as as long as you have that focus, as long as you're being, I think, clear, you have that clarity on what your approach is, and you can totally wholesale adopt someone else's model, or you can just take bits and pieces that you like and make it your own. At least there's a plan. And I think that's the commonality with the businesses that are less successful, the leaders who are less successful, is they are, it's okay to be making it up as you go along, but at least learn and adapt and build your own thing. It's the folks who just are passive in this process and just let the wind blow them any way it may. Those are the folks who I think struggle. So yeah, whatever lens, whatever framework you use is, and if you're making it up as you go along, at least have a thing, right? Have a cogent approach to this stuff.
Yeah, it was all the one of the big P's was people. It's all about the people. And I broke down the different people that you work with. You work with your personnel, your teammates. You work with primary care. In your case, it may be, if for us as specialists, it was working with the primary care provider. Anyhow, it's kind of cool. And the other thing with P's, you have to come do OrthoBrain University when you're in Cleveland. The entire OrthoBrain model, the entire company, I outlined on one whiteboard, and it was all P's. You'll have to see it, really enjoy it, about the people, the process, the promise. It was really cool. So that whole thing with the P's has really struck a chord. So Chris, you mentioned Tend. I've been in some of your studios. Those are special places. Calling them dental offices doesn't feel right. What is this? Is there some secret sauce that made a dental practice truly something, call it elevated, at least in the way it feels, and rightly so in the nomenclature? I mean, you do feel like you're in a studio.
I appreciate you saying that. I think so. Our brand promise is dental done differently, and it works a couple ways. It is a promise to our patient that you're going to have a differentiated experience. This is something any practice can do. Tend, following that Osterwalder framework we used before, we will see anyone, but we're building our practice to a particular target demographic. The main demographic we are treating is young urban professionals. Young urban professionals. We are largely in urban settings, and we are largely seeing folks in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. We see kids. We see folks older than that. We're not turning anyone else out of that demographic away, to be sure. But the majority of our patients, we call them members, the majority of those patients are in that demographic. So if you're in an urban setting, busy business people, right, you can start to get a sense of what kind of experience that person would want. And that's what we seek to do, is create an experience from the paint color on the walls to how they book appointments. All of those things are catering to that particular audience. And so that does create this differentiated experience, dental done differently. I think that we have to also give them a differentiated experience from a clinical perspective. The differentiation can't just end with the amenities that we give them. At the end of that fun experience that we create, how they book appointments and all these things, the nice atmosphere, spa-like atmosphere, all that good stuff. If at the end of that, when it comes down to the dentist, the hygienist, the dental assistant, the clinical team, the front of house team, if it's just like every other dental office, then the differentiation is lost. And I'm not making a qualitative statement that other dental practices aren't giving great experiences. Far from it. I just mean it needs to continue to be this unique thing that delivers on this promise of dental done differently. So for us, we also have our clinical vision is that we are doing comprehensive and preventative dentistry. Yes, we see tooth decay. Yes, we see gum disease. Yes, we see people in pain. We see abscesses. We see all of those normal things, but we kind of distinguish between that more urgent care and comprehensive and preventative dentistry. And so we spend the time working with our providers on how to make sure they are calibrated in diagnosing, treatment planning, and presenting in a non-pushy, non-salesy way, because we don't do that. But diagnosing, treatment planning, and presenting treatment that is less urgent. Now, you and I think, and most dentists think, and most hygienists think, any oral health opportunity is urgent. It's high priority. But to put it in the context, the way that we would say to someone, hey, you've got a cavity here, we should go ahead and take care of that with a filling. We believe that the way we would talk about malocclusion or an airway issue or wear, those things are super important to us. But let's acknowledge that the patient came in today to get a cleaning. And for them, this is going to feel like it's coming out of left field. If an airway issue, if there's a potential like moderate sleep apnea, we know this could be life-changing for them. Malocclusion, this could be life-changing for them to treat this, especially address it before it becomes a more expensive, more involved problem down the road. But let's keep in mind the audience. This patient is like, I just came here for a cleaning, and if we were to, so there's ways in what we train our dentists on how to thoughtfully, compassionately educate our teams on that. So the vibe that you have when you walk into a 10 practice, a 10 studio, there's these amenities, the atmosphere all looks different. But what's also important, I think we want for our patients to feel that the way they've been cared for, the way they've been communicated with is also just as differentiated.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's exactly what I felt when I walked in. People didn't know who I was as I walked into the offices to see what they were really like. And I think when you're a true partner with somebody else, you really need to see under the hood,
Absolutely.
and what it's really like in order to be able to support each other. This may be a question that you haven't had before. I've got a few of those, and I know our time is running short. We may have some listeners. I'm sure we have some listeners out there, some dentists that find your model very appealing. If they're interested in joining 10, what are the attributes you're looking for? So there are a lot of dentists, I'm sure, that come and they're looking for a role. In order to create what you have, you need special people. What is it that you want in a dentist?
Well, continuing with our frameworks for this, I call it the 3 E's. Okay. So, and I've interviewed lots of dentists, and we want to have a differentiated experience for them. And this goes for hygienists too. One, excellence in dentistry. I mean, that should go without saying. Hopefully every employer wants to bring on top talent that does excellent work. But for us, that also means this continuing pursuit of excellence, a little bit better every day, right? We're not going to just be satisfied in doing something the way we did it yesterday, just because that's the way we did it yesterday. Let's grow. Let's get better outcomes for our patients. The second is efficiency. Knowing our target demographic, that young urban professional, they're like, let's go. They want to see a certain efficiency with these appointments. Can we do more dentistry without compromising outcomes, without cutting corners? So, there's doctors who are really efficient. They're way up the curve towards mastery of this. We typically aren't hiring folks right out of dental school for that very reason. Wouldn't be fair to them. Because we need our patient population needs folks who are coming in with a level of confidence and efficiency with which they deliver. So being able to work out of 2 treatment rooms with 2 dental assistants, and also, do thoughtful hygiene checks, that bouncing back and forth, which I did in my own practice for years. I love it. I thrive on it. If it's not at that tempo, I'm getting bored. But that is something that's important. So right there, that constant pursuit of excellence, but also being able to move efficiently, right there with just those 2 items, it's maybe not an experience for everyone, and that's okay. Those, anyone listening that is not a good fit for will, I'm sure, thrive in a different environment. The last one for us is experience. We are a hospitality forward organization, and true hospitality is about a lot more than just being nice to people. And so we use things like Net Promoter Score, NPS, and we spend time training and role playing to figure out how to take care of the most difficult patients, how to de-escalate a situation when a patient's upset, whether it's your fault or not. How do we own that experience? And so we talk about feelings, and we talk about, perfecting, continuing to improve how we communicate with patients. And we don't do scripts. We don't say, here, memorize this, and you must always say this. We don't do that. But we have frameworks, again, that can help someone get out of these tricky situations and deliver better and better experiences, but also be able to take the passion they have for delivering great care and express it in even more effective ways. So you put that on top of the other 2 things. And again, there are doctors I've interviewed, they're like, I don't want to talk about patients' feelings. I'm just here to go in and, produce a lot. I'm like, this may not be the right opportunity for you. You're going to be really successful somewhere. But at 10, we do care about patients' feelings, and we do get into frameworks on how we can de-escalate and things like that. So if there's a dentist that's listening to this that likes the model and the 3 E's that I just went through sounds really exciting, and you want to work towards that, then yeah, this could be a great fit.
That's great. This is assessing potential candidates simplified. It's beautiful. I love the simplicity of that, and it makes absolute sense. And by the way, I never did anything with E's, just P's.
Okay.
I graduated past the P. What question, whether a dentist is thinking about TEND, taking over for a senior doctor, becoming an associate, whatever it is that they want to endeavor to do as the next step in their career, when they meet the potential partner or employer, what's the most, what do you think the most important question is that they need to ask? What should they look for?
That's a really good question. So, I would be curious to ask to if I was. It's been a minute since I interviewed at a dental employer, right? It's been a oh gosh, maybe getting on 20 years, but I would ask about the business model or find out a question about that because somehow get around to that answer. There's more than one business model than just private practice and small group practice and DSO. Again, whom are you serving and what is the unique value proposition that you use to serve them? And I think there's a lot of practices that don't have much clarity on that. Maybe they don't have a whole framework where they figured this out, a whole process that figured it out. But if they've been in business for a little while, they should have an idea. Hey, in general, I'm seeing this type of person. I'm seeing a lot of retirees. When I go around the country and actually around the world and ask dentists this question, I say, who do you want to treat more of? What type of person do you want to see more of? And people usually have pretty clear answers on that. So I would want to know the answer to that question. When I'm in the Midwest, I was lecturing in Nebraska not long ago, and in this particular, everyone was like, "We see a lot of farmers." I was like, "That's great. You like seeing farmers? Yeah, we love seeing farmers. Here's all the reasons why." With the different patient populations that you would treat, they have different needs. You're going to meet those needs differently, and that completely changes the practice environment that you're going to see. If you say to yourself, I want to do lots of dentures and see lots and lots of kids, then TEND probably isn't going to be the perfect place for you. And you would only know that by familiarizing yourself with their business model. And again, I'm defining that as the types of patients you're seeing and the types of services you deliver them in a unique fashion. So I think that's one of the most important questions. And if you ask most folks, what's your business model? They may not know how to answer that. So that's why I say, like, if you kind of suss out those elements, and I think you would find out if this is going to be a great opportunity.
Terrific. I've got two more questions, and you probably haven't been asked either one of them before, and I know you've done a lot of these podcasts. What is the single best question somebody has asked you as a guest on the podcast, and can you share the answer? I hate when I miss obvious questions, and maybe there's something you can think of that was really powerful.
I'll cheat a little bit and say no one has ever asked me what question should you ask in an interviewer, and that was a very good one. And I think that hopefully provides a lot of insights for folks. Oh gosh, I was. I'm going to cheat and say the one you just asked me. That's it's such a cheat because it's just the fresh one in my mind. But I think that really was an excellent question. Especially for folks who are interviewees out there, they feel like it's a one-sided thing. The person that they're talking to has all the control, the power as the potential employer. And I would say, build some confidence. You're interviewing each other, and it may feel bold to ask a question like that. It's not that you're asking someone to defend their business model, but just, do they know about it, and what would their answer be? But it's okay to be a little bold. And I've always respected, as the person who has interviewed many dentists now at 10, I've always appreciated when I get to the, what questions do you have for me stage? And if they're just like, nope, nothing, everything's great, I'm like, oh, all right, they're maybe not as engaged. When they have some thoughtful questions, that's great. When they have a bold question, they'll like, what is your business model? I'm like, okay, this person's really engaged and really interested. So, oh, Dr. Dan, cop out answer, but the one you asked me, I've never been asked before, and I think that's a really good one.
Okay, well, thank you for the compliment. And here's me being vulnerable. There's the big V for those of you watching. My first practice, I lasted 10 days, and that counted the weekend. All right. And so the problem was everything was perfect on paper. The doctor was in his 70s, and I wanted to take over a practice, wanted somebody who was going to just outright sale, let me take it. I never asked him the right questions, and he wasn't ready to retire. So had I asked the right questions and been more probing, I probably could have avoided my first, I'll call it disastrophe. It was a disaster wrapped up in a catastrophe because you don't have any money out of school. So that's why I need to ask the question. Here is the very last question, and you may not have been asked this one before. It may take a moment to think about it because you have so many different ways you could answer this question. What have you done, Chris, that has made your parents most proud?
My parents were of the mind that, we don't care what you do, but just be passionate about it, whatever it is. And I think they were proud to see that as I went through these different chapters, as I said, hey, I'm going to start speaking. Even though I, had only been out for a handful of years, I'm going to be editor of dental economics. That was a proud moment for my father, an orthodontist who certainly knew what dental economics was. I'm going to take this position with Tend. I think they were very proud to see that I was continuing to pursue what made me passionate, and that I wasn't just putting things on cruise control. It's great to be on cruise control, and if you're happy, and just keep that momentum and just keep going for as long as you're comfortable and excited and engaged. But I think they know that when I've made these changes, flipping the page into the next chapter, that I was always doing it because I was ready to pursue my next passion. And I think that's what made them the most proud.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And Chris, I must say, I learned an abundant amount of information, even making some notes as we were going. I'll certainly watch this to make sure I catch the rest of it. Please accept my heartfelt gratitude for being so open with the shares, tackling the really tough questions that you haven't been asked before, and most importantly, for you agreeing to come to Cleveland, the rock and roll capital of the world, to share more with our dentist partners. Thank you for joining us on Deep Dives with Dr. Dan, powered by OrthoBrain. We hope today's episode challenged your thinking, inspired your leadership, and helped you reimagine what's possible, all inside your practice. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if something resonated with you, please share it with a colleague or your team. So until next time, let's keep diving deeper. Thank you for joining us on Deep Dives with Dr. Dan, powered by OrthoBrain. We hope today's episode challenged your thinking, inspired your leadership, and helped you reimagine what's possible inside your practice. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if something resonated, please share it with a colleague or with your team. So until next time, let's keep diving deeper.